Jenn Hall, and my business is called Talk to Jenn Hall. So Jenn with two N's, Talk to Jenn Hall. And usually what I do is help other fitness professionals pursue a different path in their career, or maybe people who are professionals in other areas move into the fitness and or wellness arena. I do a lot of digital media marketing for folks like Tasha Edwards. I built her website. A lot of lovely studio kind of website and wellness or spa kind of website design and development, and then email marketing and tons of social media. I started doing social media in 2006. I don't even know if you knew there was one then. That was Facebook way back in the day when everything was free. Probably my biggest success story in social media is the account called Bar Above. It's so big now, there's a whole team of people managing it, and I started it from zero. So that one makes me really happy. If you're looking at my own social media and you're like, this chick's a social media guru, only for people who pay me. And apparently I don't pay myself well enough. But yeah, I ended up in the digital space as much as I am in the physical space. So, and I still teach and train, as we say, regular folks, people who are not fitness pros or not Pilates pros or not yogis. Love the special populations and people who are lifelong athletes. That's what the rest of you call old people. Okay. People who are athletes, been working out longer than we've been alive. Those are my favorite.
Amazing.
Nice.
And personal training, what kind of areas within the fitness area do you
most of my personal training clients have at least one bionic part, right? Like they've had their knees replaced, their hips replaced, their shoulders replaced. Some of them have had their corneas replaced, all kinds of things. And then I end up with people who've had strokes or been in really bad car accidents and have
life events,
crushed, anything with out of physical therapy or occupational therapy. And I would be their next step, maybe. When my son was 7, he's now 19, and you would never know this happened to him, but he had a stroke when it was a really freak accident. He had the flu. We didn't know it. He started coughing at school. Within 24 hours, he was in a coma on a ventilator. They had to do something called ECMO to save his life, which went through his carotid artery. It perforated, so he bled to death, literally. Hands and feet were cold. All of his organs stopped. He's a miracle child, came back 3 times, and had to learn everything again. Like we're talking swallow on your own, breathe on your own, sit up, walk, run, everything. At the time, he was a basketball athlete playing on 2 traveling teams. So he was a super athlete. He lost the use of his right leg for a while. He had to have his foot completely reconstructed. That was last summer. And so this summer, we're working on driving, which is a big deal. But if you met my son, you would never know he had a stroke. You would never know there was anything wrong with him. And seeing him come back from he can't do anything to he can do everything again, and doing the research during that process, because his physical therapist and occupational therapist were relying a lot on his dad and I, since we were both athletic trainers by trade, to be able to help him. And then talking to a child, that's a whole nother level. And a child with a traumatic brain injury, that's a whole nother level. So it just gave me a different kind of compassion and empathy. And also seeing the ability of someone to come all the way back from zero, no matter how old they were. It made me interested in, how does the brain work? How does the brain work relative to the body? What is the best way to introduce exercise to someone whose brain doesn't function like ours? All of those things that I would have never thought about before. I was like, literally, what comes after this 8 count, right? That's what choreography is next. I wasn't thinking like that any longer. Much more about how does the brain fire, and how can we rewire some of those pieces of the brain that are maybe not functioning as well any longer. And I think that's what's led me down this road in personal training. I'm not looking for, the 35-year-old lady who needs to lose 10 pounds. Although I love that she's on that mission and journey and is brave enough to say, here's where I am, please help me. I'm going to send her to someone else. And I'll take on her mom who has 2 fake hips and a stroke, right? So that's usually my MO.
Excellent. Yeah. And congrats to your son for just being a fighter. Clearly he's got a warrior spirit. I think that's huge. And I've heard so much about young people having strokes lately, and one of our neighbors' sons had a stroke at 12, I believe. Pretty major thing, but he's older now, but more and more this seems to be happening. And I'd love to know, what have you heard? Is there anything happening within our children that is making this more of a thing at this time?
Well, in my son's case, it was an acute asthmatic reaction to the flu. So remember back in the day before
Asthma.
flu used to kill people? It would have,
Yeah.
had we not gotten him on ECMO, because we didn't know his lungs were completely filled with fluid, mostly because he'd never had asthma before. So I think just being really aware as a parent of some of the things that are out there, and just because your kid's in grade school and has never experienced this kind of allergy or reaction to something doesn't mean it isn't real.
Yes. Yes.
Taking my son to the pediatrician the day we ended up in the ER, and the pediatrician had sent us home with a nebulizer and directions to do things all night long. And me as a parent, when my son was coughing so much that he vomited, I took him to the ER. His dad didn't necessarily agree with that decision because we'd already taken him to the doctor. So just listen to your gut, right?
Mm-hmm.
Listen. Had we not taken him to the ER, he definitely wouldn't have made it through the night. So, listening to your gut as a parent, and it's much better to go to the doctor and them tell you nothing's wrong than not go. So
exactly.
And that's another the two of you can speak upon, right? We're talking about my ex-husband is a Black man. He's not the most trusting person in terms of doctors, and his dad was really not trusting in terms of doctors. So that was a generation. Right. He's like a fitness pro. He's brilliant. He has a degree in comprehensive science. And now that we've been through all these medical things, he has a much greater respect for what community. But some of that is social, right? You got to pay attention.
Absolutely.
Telling you what and what you should listen to as a parent, even if it's the other parent.
Yeah, you're right. I there's so many times in so many ways that people will just minimize what you're thinking, what you're feeling, especially when it comes to kids. Oh, you're a first-time parent, or,
yes,
I wouldn't do that because, and, that parental instinct, that is primal. That is something that we should honor just as much as we honor, the guy behind us is following us. I don't feel good about that. It's just as critical.
Absolutely.
Wow. That's a different conversation we were having before he came on here.
Right. You do this all day.
Yeah. Martin's like, oh, let me write this down.
I know, right? Yes. That is powerful. That is amazing. I was looking at your last post around you're trying to get around dance, basically, right? And young people in dance. So what's your connection with that as well?
Okay, so I used to teach at Georgia State University in the kinesiology department, and through them I got involved in a program that takes kids from after school who wouldn't really have anywhere else to go. They go pick them up on the buses and they bring them to Georgia State or another facility that's closer to their school that's kind of supervised by Georgia State. And they bring people like myself in who've been professional dancers or professional athletes, if maybe the kids that are coming in are more into football, basketball, baseball than they are into dance team or drill team.
Yep.
The summer before their 9th grade year, we take the ones who've been really dedicated and trying really hard in their sport, and we work with them to help them make a team in high school. Because once they hit 8th grade, they're no longer eligible for that after school program. So they're running the streets with no supervision. So to keep that from happening, we work really hard to get them into an extracurricular activity. So this year I was working with about 75 dancers who wanted to make a dance team or a drill team. And 19 of them made it across 4 high schools, which is amazing. That's a huge percentage of kids.
Good.
Usually there's a grant that funds the kids' band fees. So if you've ever been on a dance team or a drill team or in a marching band, it's between like $300 and $800 to participate, because that includes like your uniform and driving to and from the away games and whatever they pay the band director extra, all that kind of stuff. It's usually covered by a grant, but this year there was no grant. So I have been trying really hard, and Tasha Edwards and See Her Healthy, which is a nonprofit that we run together and with the rest of an executive board. Michelle is on that board too. We are trying really hard to raise $500 per student to alleviate that band fee. The ones, the schools where, like one of the schools to be on the flag course, $1,200. That's great.
Yeah.
The band have been really awesome about working with me and letting me guarantee the girls' place and letting me piecemeal their money or charge it to a credit card or whatever I can do to help them. So we are just really working hard to make sure that those kids who are really talented and really dedicated aren't limited because they're poor. And
Right.
I say this from a child who I started working at 14. So I know what I'm talking about. Like if I wanted to be on an extracurricular team, which I had to be in order to get a scholarship, then I was going around trying to raise money to do it or working myself to do it.
Yes.
These kids, a lot of them do work, and they have to raise money anyway for the things that their band fee doesn't cover, like their tights, their shoes, their makeup, their hair, all those things that come along with performing. Their families don't have the money for that. Mine didn't either, so I totally get it. Like the reason I'm a dancer is because my mom was a dance teacher. It wasn't because she could have afforded dance lessons. If she wasn't a dance teacher, I would not be a dancer. So it's one of those things where I see these really talented kids and they're so dedicated and they try so hard, and it's just wrong for them to be denied because of money. And it's one of those things that, like, what do you do about that? I can't do everything, but I can do something, and I can ask everyone else something. And I have people like Tasha who are willing to, go above and beyond and ask their larger audience to do something. So that's kind of where we are with that. And if any of your audience is interested, it's See Her Healthy is the name of our 501(c)(3), and a tax deductible donation. So it's spelled out See Her Healthy, and you can find us on Instagram, PayPal, everywhere. And we're a charity you can find on Facebook as well. So, and it's just something that we are, really, Tasha and I are both super passionate about, coming from the backgrounds we came from. Though we're so different, we are so alike. It's pretty amazing to meet someone from a completely different area of the country who grew up totally different than you, who is so much like you.
Yeah.
You see that. Talk a little bit about your dance background, like you were mentioning earlier, because that really does tie into the conversation and why you can amplify these voices too.
So being a dancer, growing up in a dance studio, my mom was very concerned that the other teachers and especially parents would think that she favored me. So instead, she picked on me. Now, she didn't mean to. She didn't know she was doing it. But two things happened. One, she made me a really good dancer because I would be in a perfect position and she'd come up and be like, relax your hands. I mean, something ridiculous. And the rest of the people around me would look like garbage and she wouldn't say anything. So I did become a really good dancer. But the second thing that happened is that I had no idea I was a good dancer. I thought I was terrible because every time I turned around, she was correcting me. So that kind of helped because I didn't know I was a good dancer. I was always trying harder and taking more classes and doing more things and trying to learn some other genre that no one else knew. And I am old enough that hip hop was not its own genre. It was a part of jazz class. And because I had been on drill team and dance team and learned how to make my movements really sharp, which is the same thing as popping and locking, that's what they call it now, I was really good at hip hop. My mom looked like a drunk chicken doing it, but I was so I started auditioning for things, and I was rock star workout team. And James King, who is a Grammy-winning choreographer, he choreographed for like Madonna and Prince, and he's my hero. He was the choreographer for Nike Rockstar. So I had my son in August. So here I am at 190 pounds, and he calls me in October and says, hey, there's an audition for a Beyonce tour in January. And you have incredible technique and your ability to remember choreography is outrageous, and you should come. And so I went, okay, I just need to lose 60 pounds in 3 months. I would recommend that. And I went to audition and auditioned with 4,000 other people, and 8 of us made it. And from there, I got to dance with Beyonce and Usher and Jay-Z and performed with like Alicia Keys at Carnival. And I've had amazing life experiences through dance, which is another reason it's so important to me to share it, even if it's in a fitness space or even if it's in a Pilates space. Like, when you're laying on the floor doing Pilates, I'm sorry, girls and boys, you're doing ballet, right? You're dancing on your back, like it or not. So it's one of those things that is part of everything I do in some way or another.
Nice.
And the other piece to that, because that's an amazing story, but we're talking about the spaces that puts you in, right? being the only white person in Black spaces?
Often. I found myself in that position so many times throughout my life. I'm not really sure how that started. I do have a dad that's off the boat from Italy, and I look very different from my dad and all my siblings. So that might be part of it. I was always kind of like the milkman's kid. We all have blue eyes, which is amazing, but they have dark skin and dark hair. And I got my mom's Cherokee, Indian, English, and Swedish bright, bright, bright skin. So I've always been a little bit different from the rest of my family. And I think maybe that's where it started. And then being a hip hopper really early on in hip hop, most of that culture was not the same color as me. And I don't want to clarify what color it was because it's every shade of brown, but I have no brown unless you count the freckles, right? So I was always different than the rest of the crew. In terms of dancing professionally, definitely been the only person in a Black space. Like all the stage managers, directors, everybody on the tour managers, roadies, everybody was a shade of brown except me. And for 8 months, I did go by the white girl, as you're aware. That comes from Beyonce. She used to call me Shaniqua because she said, you dance like Becky, but you look like Shaniqua. And then she would tell someone, go get Shaniqua. They wouldn't know my name, and I'd end up being the white girl. So that was fine for 8 months, but I can't imagine living my whole life that way. And so I think, as I've told you before, I have about this much experience in understanding what it's like to be different, but I have like this much compassion because I would not want to be treated that way for my whole life. And I do, like I said, have a brown son. So he's got a whole nother life experience that I'm not sure how to deal with. So, you know, I try to surround myself with people that are smarter than me, like the two of you, for example, and see what I can learn and what I can glean and help him.
Wow.
Right?
There's
Like,
just so much.
I know.
So much. So then, all right, I'm just going to ask, how do you feel when somebody says to you, oh, well, I can't have that conversation, or that's uncomfortable for me because fill in the blank? Being a person who was literally immersed, you're on a tour bus. It's not like you're going to jump out, you know. I would love to hear you address this as a person that's been in the middle of it, to people who are just afraid to even make a peep about it. What would you say to people who are afraid? And I use that term kind of lightly because I can't really define it as fear.
Well, I think, you know, I'm careful who I say what to in terms of not wanting to hurt people's feelings, of course. But I think that every time I've ever asked a question I was afraid to ask, which it's happened many times in my life, the answer gave me and that other person such a greater understanding that it was worth going through the fear. So if you never ask a question, you'll never get the answer. And then you'll just stay afraid. Like, what is the point in that? Like, you know, everybody has a different source they go to for their inspiration or motivation or their hope or their faith. The source I go to says over 365 times to not have fear. So being afraid to ask a person a question is like shutting yourself off. You're telling yourself that question you have is not that important.
Yeah.
So is that important? Don't be afraid. Ask the question and both of you will benefit from it. Like one of those things I just absolutely love about Tasha is, for example, I made a video the other day and that video could have been offensive to people, but I didn't catch it. I didn't catch it because I don't have the same life experience. Thank God for friends like Tasha who watched that video and went, take that down. Oh my God. Right? So, and another person might have been afraid to tell me that, but Tasha knows me well enough to say, hey, you're going to alienate some people. So it's so important that we rely on each other like that. And most especially in the fitness industry. Like I, you know, tell other fitness pros, I'm a program specialist. So I, you know, teach a lot of other fitness pros. My bottom line for all of them and for everyone listening is refuse to compete. You're good enough like you are. There is space for you already. The people that are competing with you are wasting their time. Do not waste yours playing that game. So I like some of that ability to ask questions comes from you're afraid about how people are going to see you. They're going to see you as brave. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're going to see you as brave if you're willing to ask.
And so what if they don't? that still
Not
shouldn't
question.
take that power from you to stop moving forward.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And you may ask someone a question and they never speak to you again. Well, they probably weren't worth your time to begin with.
Boom.
You know, a friend that won't let you be yourself. They weren't your friend to start with.
Yeah.
That's something my dad would say. Yeah. That is definitely a mic drop moment.
Yes. Totally wisdom from above, right? Wisdom from the people we've met in our previous lives or those who've come before us, right? If they're not willing to hear you out, then you are wasting your breath.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes you do have to draw a line in the sand. Sometimes you have to say, you know what, am I uncomfortable because of me? Because I'm not ready to grow or whatever it is, and own that. Am I not comfortable because this is not a good place for me or a space for me or whatever it is at this time? But whatever it is, that level of reflection and introspection is a requirement. I think you can tootle a long life and offend people, like you said, do these things that maybe aren't intentional, but you don't have the wherewithal to make the changes to keep from doing it. Or you can stand tall in your life and show up and learn and grow and be. And I think that's what you're saying there. And I think it's so important that people just start doing that.
Absolutely. There's a sense of just understanding who are in your circle. And when you ask those questions, who are the people that know your intent before you even say your words?
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. You have
Yes.
on your side who has differing opinions.
Yes.
That takes you being an adult, right?
Yes.
Like my very best friends in the world, she's not in the fitness industry at all. We disagree on a huge fundamental issue. If I told the two of you what it was, we'd be here for 3 more days, okay? But we just agreed. You're still my best friend from high school. I've still known you forever and ever. I still love you and your children, but you're wrong on this issue. And she feels the same way about me. And that's okay, right? We just don't talk about that unless we want to fight. And that's just about being an adult, right? That's just an adult. And it's so weird because in this day and age, so few people can do that.
I was just gonna say it's healthy.
Yes.
Even it's refreshing to hear someone talk about like having a fight with someone that is their friend. It's not like they were my friend. We had a fight. End of period. End of story.
Yeah.
We live. We fight. We have conflict, and we grow. Right. So.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. If you are afraid to grow, you'll never have any friends in the fitness industry because you're learn something differing opinion. Always going to be a different. Like, I don't believe in hit training. Well, hit training's the best thing ever. You know, I mean, there's always going to be different. You wouldn't have any friends if you can't agree to disagree.
Yeah. I don't think the applies in
always
industry. Yeah, we don't relate at all, eh, Misty?
No.
It's not different about Pilates or anything.
No one's going to tell you that you're wrong about anything in
Right.
Pilates land. I mean, we sing Kumbaya on the daily here.
Okay,
right. In Latin. That's how much we sing Kumbaya.
I keep Pilates on the beat. So how many of you want to hang me now? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, what? Music in Pilates? You heretic.
I know. How dare I stimulate your neurosystem while we're working with your body? What?
To the corner with you.
Dare you? How dare you?
Michelle Sims and Fernando. Have some fun people in the space. How are you guys doing? That's it's so interesting. You know, I had a conversation. We had Sal Shoza on yesterday, and we had a fun conversation about play. And how when we were kids, we figured this play thing out. We just moved and we just did our things. And then we got so caught up in boxing ourselves in with movement as we got older.
Agreed.
For sure.
Agreed.
For sure.
Yeah.
We were in a workshop with Victor on the connector yesterday, and he said, okay, we're standing up and we had the connector on. He said, okay, jump. And I was like, what? I had to jump while standing. Like, you know, you just get so used to moving in your prescribed ways.
Yeah.
And as I'm jumping, I'm thinking, maybe I should skip later. I feel like I want to just skip. And, little things that I used to skip everywhere as a kid. I would skip. The other thing I used to love to do was spin around in circles until I fell over. I would just stand in the front yard. My neighbors probably thought there was definitely something wrong with that girl, but I loved to spin and then stop and then quickly go the other direction. These are things that I have not done since I stopped dancing. That's when I stopped spinning. But, it's one of those things that just makes you laugh. When you start spinning, unless you're going to barf, of course, you just get this smile on your face. There's a return to youth when you do these things, when you jump in puddles and skip and, whatever it is, moon people. Yeah. The point of the story is that we just need to get back to that play aspect.
Yeah, agreed. Like if you ever take a dance class from me, a cardio dance class specifically, the things I say are things like, there are no mess ups, just unexpected solos. If you don't like my choreography, do your own. Just know I'll steal it and teach it to other people. Because I want people to realize you don't have to do what I'm doing. If you're dancing, fun and cardio, that's all that I care about, right? You're having fun, you're getting cardio. Those are the two requirements. Everything else is extra.
Yeah.
So I think if we talk about freedom of movement in space, we make it a little bit more accessible to everyone.
Okay, so real talk with two dancers in the room. You just said that a minute ago, and I felt myself tighten up. Because I'm not a dancer. If I was to go into your dance class, I'd be like, is this right? Is this right? What's next? Look up. Like I'd have eyes on you the whole time to make sure I'm doing it right.
Right. And you would hear me say multiple times, there is no right way. There is no right.
Have you ever?
Care what foot you're on, what arm you use. If you run into the person next to you, just apologize. Like, it is such a.
That's okay. That's fun and that's good and that's healthy rhetoric. But
right.
I'd still be like, okay, what's next?
Right. And honestly, like teaching you, I would cue you the whole way. You'd have it because that's your mentality, right? You want to do it right.
Right. So you recognize the type of learner I am.
Do it
so
right.
You have to adapt it to. Yeah.
Right. But I'm also going to give you permission to do it wrong and it be okay. So
have you ever been to one of those silent dance parties, Martin?
I'm clutching my coffee for like security right now.
Okay, so I now will be even my Joker cup.
The silent dance party, yeah, had the headphones on, and you're just like, yeah, yes, I have.
Yeah,
I feel like watching a silent dance party is probably what you're worried about. Like sometimes when you watch a silent dance party, you're like, are they really all listening to the same song? But that's the cool part about a silent dance party. Like, I could sit and watch a silent dance party forever and not know what song they're listening to.
Yes.
Because there's just so much fun in the randomness, in the freedom, in the, they're not even looking around to see what everyone else is doing. That's the hard thing about taking a dance class, is seeing and hearing and putting it all together and realizing that maybe you're not with the group. But at the same time, there's so many good things that happen when you're not with the group. That exploration, that I am high strung with movement, and I understand what you're saying, because talking with Jenn here about hip hop, when I danced, hip hop wasn't even a thing until like the tail end of it. I could not do it. What did you say your mom looked like? A drunk chicken? I was worse than a drunk chicken. I still cannot hip hop. There's just an element of rhythm that I feel like my body just does not appreciate. And so I would have to do this sometimes, and I would be like, this isn't even dance. This is da-da-da-da. Like I'd so boxed myself out of it that I couldn't even show up as the drunken whatever kind of chicken. All I'm saying is that when you are in the place to experience movement freely, take that as a gift. Take that as an opportunity to just breathe it in and to get to know your body and your mind in a completely different way. Sometimes you let the body take over and sometimes you let the mind take over. But at the end of the day, The beauty is in the fact that you are moving and you're participating. And like I said, as a person who has, done choreography, been a choreographer, all of these things, that's hard for even me to do. But when I do it, it is joy.
I will tell you, if you look around any of my cardio dance classes, if you were in the class, you would feel comfortable because there are people, there are people going the wrong way. Hand movements, like it's not. And then most of the class is doing what I'm doing, but there are 2 or 3 people that are like on their own planet. And I love that because, again, if someone new walks in, they don't feel the pressure to be perfect. I will, as a dancer, that's not happening for me. I'm holding my breath in dance class trying to learn every movement perfectly. I can relate. The people who have fun in my class are usually not dancers. The dancers are too serious. Like, we just want every mambo cha-cha right. Like, we're too serious. So I really enjoy the non-dancers and the ones who are willing. Like, I have one lady, she's amazing. English is probably her 5th language. She just has no natural rhythm. And she moves very sporadically. She's, just very sporadically. But watching her do my whole class off the beat, going the wrong way in another language in her head is amazing. And she's sweating buckets by the end and smiling. And that's all it.
Smiling.
Yeah. So can I get her phone number and just have a support group?
She would be so happy to have you next to her in class.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Could you hold my hand? No, I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, what's it? Michelle here is like, get to work, says y'all unhinged today. LOL. That unhinging, that it is that unhinging, untethering ourselves from the framework that we put ourselves in to do something new.
Perfection is so boring. Be asymmetrical. It's okay. We don't have to be perfect. It's impossible. What would be the point? And it's hard to not tell yourself that continually and still carry that attitude.
Yes.
If you're, walking into a genre you should be perfect at. If you're a master reformer trainer and you do something incorrect in someone else's eyes on the reformer, is it really going to affect you that badly? Or be able to move on from there?
And actually, if I could just add to that example, for those of us who are teachers, I know that most people prefer someone who comes in who is like a blank canvas, someone who has never done it before, and the excitement of that movement, versus someone who comes in and says, well, I've been doing Pilates over here for X amount of years. And then you have to, you feel like you have to help them to undo everything before they move into a new thing. We're always waiting to embrace that new person, ready to explore movement in a new way as a teacher. So I'm preaching to myself on behalf of every other athletic person who does not have a dance bone in their body, to say that when you go into those spaces, that the instructors are waiting for you.
They are. I am. I want to have the joy of dance. I want you to do it and love it, and love the way you move, not the way I move, like the way you move. Because that's what makes dance interesting.
100%.
Bodies, different movement. That's what makes it interesting. If we all look the same, we'd just be a bunch of rockettes or, Balanchine ballerinas that look like we're 12. Yeah, we don't need that. Yeah, a lot of differences. Difference is what makes it interesting.
True.
So, and I see there's people on here willing to hold your hand in class, Martin.
Thank you, Terry.
Notice how he didn't even address that. He was like, no, I don't know about this.
That'll be lost in the replay. That's fine.
We just have you can do all the hit segments, right?
Yeah. Exactly. No,
we're just going to give him headphones. That's it. Put him in the corner, headphones. He'll have the silent dance party.
Yeah.
Good. That was so fun. Alex and I did that when we were in Mexico. It was fun to do, and it's even funner to watch the others do it when we were done. Yeah. Can you share your Spellman story that we're saying before we came on air, even though it's like total segue into nothing? I thought it was interesting.
Talking earlier about being the only white person in black spaces. In high school, I had really high GPA, took lots of AP classes, and was in every extracurricular activity because I knew I had to have a scholarship to go to college. Like, there was no way anybody was going to be able to pay for anything for me. So I was dancing my heart out and getting really good grades. And so I started applying for different schools, and I didn't know that Spelman was a historically black college. So it was the only decline letter I got. and they declined me because it would not be conducive to my learning environment. And later I found out what that meant. And it was shocking to get a school that declined me, considering how many had accepted me. And it was shocking to get a school that declined me for that reason. But I know why. Gosh, if I had been there, that would not have been a good experience for me in 1990s. Definitely not. I probably would have had no friends and might have quit dancing. So I understand why they made the decision they made, but it did really shock me. And again, it gives me a teeny tiny bit of understanding into what it's like to be different, to be considered different for something that you have no control over. It wasn't my dance ability or my grades or how hard I was willing to work or any experience that I had or my personality or anything beyond my skin color that kept me out of the program.
Martin Reed, damn you. You said this was a segue into nothing, and this is such a big topic. Oh, I could shake you.
Now they can't do that. Now they would have to accept me. Now they would have to accept me because I meet all the criteria. But in the early 90s, they did not have to. So, but many Black dancers have been denied entry into a not historically Black college because of their skin color. Countless numbers, right? Countless.
Yeah.
So I'm not feel sorry for me. Just giving you some insight into why I have
context,
level of compassion for people of other tones.
I don't. And you're not asking anybody to feel sorry for you. And I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying that I would feel badly for anybody who was put in that circumstance. I know that there are people out there that do not think anybody should mix in any way and whatever, and I have no use for those people. I understand why a school like Spelman or any of the HBCUs would do that. Mm-hmm. For me, as a one-worlder, I guess, it's hard. It's always hard to sanction something like that because I do feel like there's something to be gained and learned and appreciated by the differences that people bring into an environment. When we're talking about things like college and we say, oh, well, this person is from a socioeconomically challenged background, but we invite them into a collegiate environment like Harvard or something like that, we're putting them in an environment that may be detrimental to their learning in a lot of ways. When you take people who don't just have, but have at such a high level of have, like the next level of have, and you put them with somebody that got into school only because they killed themselves to get there, to crush, to achieve, to overachieve. To me, we need that level of diversity, period, so that people can learn and grow and respect. And I feel like what somebody like you could have brought to that table is vast. And now, granted, when you're younger, you don't really recognize what you do bring to the table. So maybe that was a part of it as well. If it were to happen today, even barring the fact that they couldn't bar you now, I think it may be a different story because the level of depth of character is different when you're older. But again, I think this is why more of us need to make sure that we end up in places where we don't necessarily belong or exist, if we can handle that, because of the richness that it brings to the table.
Well, and I don't know if Michelle and Tasha are watching, or if Alex McLean or any of the people who were presenters at IDEA last week. It was really interesting. We're sitting in the presenter party, and there are these two tables, and guess what? Everyone at those two tables was brown except me. And I put myself there. Those are my friends. It wasn't conscious, okay? Those are my friends. It just so happened that Michael Piercy looked up and went, oh, you're the token. And it was completely a joke. And it was funny at the time. But I do that on purpose, because those are my friends. It just is who I gravitate towards. And not everyone understands that. And you might need to ask yourself the question, why don't you? Why don't you gravitate towards people who are different than you? I told you guys, I'm looking for the smartest people in the room. I'm not that.
100%.
know who is. And usually that's who it is. I mean, they have a different, a different perspective. And I also find, and if Tasha's watching, she'll agree with me here, most of the people of color that I know that are in the fitness industry have more certifications, more education, more experience, because they're required to even get a second look. That's nuts to me. But
twice as talented, 3 times as prepared.
Certifications are cute. And some boutique picked them up and said, go through our training, which is a joke. It's like 5 days of nonsense, right? But my point there is, if you are really willing to learn, you must be around people who are different than you. You must. There's no other way to learn. You are going to be stuck in a little box if you never open those little windows and walk out of it.
Reach.
Well, I mean, Martin, why are we even here? Why just let her run this call?
Exactly.
I really appreciate your perspective. I do, because, we can say it all day, but I think for people to hear it from a person who has been very intentional about why they stay, why they keep making the choices that they make.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference, a very big difference. And I appreciate your sharing that with everyone.
I think, as a person who is really concerned with fairness, and this goes back to like the dance team girls we're trying to fund, right?
Yeah.
Concerned with fairness. I think the most qualified person should get the job. End of story. I think the most qualified person should win the award. End of story. I think the most qualified person should get promoted. End of story. It's not the most qualified person that da-da-da-da-da-da. It's just the most qualified person. And I find that in the fitness space, once again, because people of color have been forced to get more certifications, to get more education, to get more experience, to work harder, they're usually the most qualified. So me being the studio fitness director at a huge, very high-end athletic club in Atlanta, there's like 2 white girls on my schedule, me and another person. Everyone else is of a different culture, color, or gender, because they're the most qualified. It's just how it worked out. I didn't do it on purpose. It's something that I did a case study on a few months ago, because I was looking at our athletic club versus the one that's just like it, that's in the same community about 5 miles away.
Yes.
2 people of color. We have 2 white people. You see the difference, right? Almost everyone on my schedule, they all have an undergraduate degree in something related to training. And most of them have a master's degree. They all have more than 1 certification. All of our Pilates and yoga folks are 200 to 500 hours. So they're really, really qualified. It just so happens that they don't look like me. I mean, like I said, it was an accident. And my boss she's a mixed race lady herself, Dina Blair, and also a Pilates professional. And she and I just happened to be looking at the roster one day like, wow, this is pretty cool. It wasn't something we did on purpose, which I think speaks volumes. Look on it. How qualified are they? And if not, why did you pick them?
Yeah.
Think about for all those directors and managers out there.
What are you doing next Wednesday?
At 10 o'clock, I can be available if you'd like. I'll put you on the calendar.
I can't be. I'll be on a plane. No, it's not next Wednesday. Let's make it another day.
We'll make it another day, Jen, because I've just nodded for the last 7 minutes. It's been like, yep.
Yeah. This is a great convo. We should definitely do this again for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So Martin Phils, yes, please watch the replay. Michelle's been in church for the last 15 minutes. And Tammy, looking forward to holding your hand when we do our dance class together.
Yes.
What are the comments are here? Yes, Olivia, it is an amazing conversation. Instagram's going to knock us off in any moment here. So I will just start our goodbyes by saying, Jen, it's been so amazing to have you. And we just scratched the surface with so many of these stories. And I had to squeeze that Spellman story in there, like a DJ playing rock and then dropping a reggae song. So I just had to just switch gears and make that happen. So yeah,
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great conversation. Thanks.
So great to have you. Thank you so, so much.
Looking forward to the next one.
Absolutely.
Yay.
We'll make that happen. Thank you,
For sure.
everybody.
Bye, you guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Happy
everyone.
Wednesday.